Hello, everybody. Well, we are going to continue with the Cold War. We've already explained what the Cold War was and who were involved in the Cold War. So, the different ideologies in the Cold War were capitalism against communism. That is to say, the United States against the Soviet Union. At first, it was thought that they could cooperate between each other, but then the different ideologies separate these countries. So to solve these differences, the big three, yes, we've got another big three in the Cold War, met even before World War II was finished. They were Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of the of Great Britain, Joseph Stalin, the leader and I would say the dictator in Soviet Union, and Roosevelt, the President of the United States. So they met in different conferences. We are going to summarize the two most important. One was at Yalta. Okay, Yalta was in the Soviet Union. And they met there when Germany was at the point of collapse. Stalin wanted Germany to pay high reparations. The same happened, remember, in World War I with the Treaty of Versailles and Clemenceau, that wanted to punish Germany as harsh as possible. Well, in this case, it was the Soviet Union represented with Stalin. He wanted Germany to pay high reparations. Roosevelt, the President of the United States, and Winston Churchill said no, that this was impossible. So they agreed that the Soviet Union would receive reparations in goods, okay, in goods, factory equipments, machinery, technology. They were taken out of Germany and even out from Austria and was given to the Soviet Union. They also took human labor as well. East German people had to work for the Soviet Union. So imagine this situation. One more time, Germany was humiliated because of this situation. Other measures that were taken at Yalta were Germany was to be demilitarized, as it happened with the Treaty of Versailles, but in this case it was divided into 4 zones, each for each country. That is to say, one for the Soviet Union, a part for France, a part for Great Britain, and another part for the United States. Berlin was also going to be divided. In fact, it was divided. The eastern part was given to the Soviet Union. And Russia gained land, the Soviet Union gained land from Poland, and Poland took land from Germany. We are going to talk about the line that was designed to for the limit, for the borders of Poland, which went even western, further than what the United States and Great Britain wanted. All countries freed from Germany, that is to say the countries that Hitler had conquered, could choose their own democratic government. And in this case, remember, is different from the Congress of Vienna at the time of Napoleon, in which it was arranged that the governments that were in power before Napoleon were established again. In this case, the countries that were freed from Germany could obtain their own government by free elections. The Soviet Union at Yalta decided that they could join the war against Japan. In fact, remember that the Soviet Union joined the war against Japan, the United States against Japan, only one day before the war ended. So it was arranged, but in fact, the Soviet Union entered that war just one day before the war had ended. So that was the conference in Yalta. There was another conference in Postdam. Postdam was in Germany, but in the area that belonged to the Soviet Union. Remember that Germany had been divided into 4 zones. Well, there were changes in the big three. Roosevelt died, yes, and when he died, he was replaced by the vice president. The vice president was Harry Truman, the one who took the decision of dropping the atomic bombs in Japan. On May the 7th, remember 1945, the Germans surrendered and the war in Europe ended. and that is when this change in the big three obviously was complicated, because Truman didn't trust Stalin, didn't trust Stalin at all. Obviously, Stalin didn't trust Roosevelt, but with Truman was even worse. And remember the reasons I explained why the Soviet Union didn't trust the United States. And then, so in this case, the change was Truman by replaced Roosevelt, but there was another surprise, because in Great Britain, Winston Churchill lost the elections, and Attlee took the position of the new prime minister. The government came back to the Labour. So that those changes were in Postdam, in the conference in Postdam. The big three were Truman, Attlee, and Stalin. Nobody replaced Stalin. So in that conference, Truman informed that the USA had developed an atomic bomb. He didn't inform that they were planning of dropping the bomb in Japan. He never said that. Well, all the same, it happened. That is another important aspect to take into account concerning the distrust of the United States on, or the Soviet Union, sorry, on the United States. It was also arranged that free elections were going to be held in Poland. Remember that we said that all the countries that had been invaded by Germany had the right to organize their own elections. But what happened? I told you at the beginning, two ideologies, communism against capitalism. So Poland was a very important country. If you remember, that was the spark of World War II, because when Germany invaded Poland, it was then that Great Britain and France declared war on Germany. So it was a very important country. So the elections were going to be carried out, but Stalin was afraid of losing the possibility of establishing there a communist government. The objective that Stalin had was to make all those countries communist, and not only to make them communists, but also to control them. So what did Stalin do? Stalin parachuted communist fighters and communist soldiers. Obviously, they belonged to the Soviet Union, to control Poland. And when the elections were being developed in different schools, well, these soldiers, these communist soldiers, checked if the Polish people voted for the Communist Party. So obviously, they won, because they frightened all the Polish who were eager to vote, and they voted for the Communist Party. So in this case, it was the first country that was controlled by the Soviet Union, because the leaders of the communist government responded to the Soviet Union. In that moment, it was that the United States realized that the Soviet Union wanted to turn all those countries communist, and it was a fight, obviously, an ideological fight between the United States and the Soviet Union. When the Soviet Union accomplished this objective of turning Poland communist, they continued. At this moment, Churchill, who was not at the government anymore, gave a speech in the President Truman's house in Missouri, and coined, in order to use a linguistic term, coined a new phrase. It was the Iron Curtain. He said that this term had to be used for the control that the Soviet Union had of the neighboring countries in Eastern Europe. That was the Iron Curtain. The United States didn't like the phrase at all, because they hoped to work cooperatively with the Soviet Union, but well, later on they realized that that was impossible. And the Soviet Union saw that there was no option to start a war. So the possibility of starting World War III started with that phrase. Continuing with the Soviet Union and the control of the countries, they also invaded Hungary. Yeah, Hungary inaugurated free elections to establish the government. But what happened? The non-communist party won. Remember that in Poland, Stalin had parachuted communist soldiers. In this case, it was not sufficient because the leaders of the non-communist party won the elections. But what happened with Stalin, that wanted to control also that country? He sent representatives of the Communist Party and is established a secret police also in that country, in Hungary, and they found evidence of a fraud. Obviously, they made up this evidence of a fraud, and the United Workers' Party, that is to say the Communist Party, was declared the winner of the elections and also responded to the Soviet Union. So now the Soviet Union had the control of Poland and had the control of Hungary. And the next step was to go for Yugoslavia. In Yugoslavia, there was a leader of the government. The leader of the government was Joseph Broz, better known as Tito. Yes, Mariscal Tito. Well, he opposed all this pressure from the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union believed that they were going to put this pressure, and that finally they were going to convince Broz Tito. But in 1948, Tito refused to accept Stalin's order. He said that the government was local and that he didn't have any right to intervene in local affairs. So Stalin expelled Yugoslavia that does not exist anymore, from the cuneiform. What was the Cominform? The Cominform. The Cominform was the Communist Information Bureau. So it was a bureau or an organization of communist countries. He also cut off all aid to Yugoslavia, hoping to control Yugoslavia, but he failed. Yugoslavia became the first European communist country not to be controlled by the Soviet Union. Okay, these are some of the measures taken at Yalta and Postdam, and also the plan that the Soviet Union had in order to control the eastern countries under communism. So it is clear that the Cold War was a war of ideologies, communism against capitalism.